This is Health Unabashed live on Healthcare Now Radio. Health Unabashed is a conversational platform where healthcare meets innovation. We engage top industry talent and dive into the heart of health and wellness from vision to business model to bring you the latest developments in health tech to promising AI applications, policy, and ultimately impact on the public's health and well-being. I'm Gregg Masters, co-host and executive producer, and am joined by the digital health aficionado himself, author, editor, global thought leader, Gil Bashe. On today's menu, we are in the company of Shaheen E Lakhan, MD, PhD, Fellow of the American Academy of Neurology. He is board certified in both neurology and pain medicine, trained at the Cleveland Clinic and Massachusetts General Hospital. Passionate about the convergence of science, technology, and medicine, he pioneered several novel therapeutics and clinical service lines to benefit patients in need. As Chief Medical Officer at Therapeutics, Dr. Lakhan advances first-in-class treatments via trailblazing pharma partnerships with Otsuka and Boehringer Ingelheim. He also serves as a board director at SpineThera, propelling novel drug delivery platforms for long-lasting pain relief. So with no further delay, Gil, the mic is yours.
Gregg, thank you very, very much for the wonderful introduction. And it's always a pleasure to spend this time with you. We've been spending really some fun, informative time in the virtual waiting room with Dr. Shaheen E Lakhan, who's just an incredible, inventive mind, a physician, a scientist, a neurologist, someone who travels throughout the United States. He is an expert not just in neurology, but also in pain medicine. Well, he has 20 years of experience, more than that. I think he has like 50 years of experience because he's covering so many different areas with expertise. Dr. Lakhan Shaheen has really been one of the, I would say, quiet drivers of the second era of medical devices and digital therapeutics. And we're going to explore with him just exactly what he's doing. Now, Dr. Lakhan is also the Chief Medical Officer of Therapeutics. We were fortunate to have on the CEO of Therapeutics about 2 years ago, David Klein, who made some very important, I would say, visionary predictions of what digital therapeutics were going to look like. Dr. Lakhan, as the Chief Medical Officer, gives us the opportunity to really get to the other side of this. So Shaheen, Dr. Lakhan, I want to welcome you to the program. It's really a thrill to have you with us today. I know you're in Massachusetts right now. I know that you're also often in Florida. It's good to see you, and I hope all your family and friends are safe at this time. I mean, Florida has gone through quite a bit in the last few weeks.
Thank you, Gil. Yes, I'm happy to say I'm safe and sound up here in Boston. But yes, I send my warm wishes to everyone in Florida.
You have such an amazing, expansive background as a neurologist, pain medical specialist. You've worked on novel therapeutics. You're working on digital therapeutics. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you why the shift to digital therapeutics from therapeutics themselves. I mean, obviously, something made you feel like you need to really focus your heart and soul on this category for the sake of patient care.
Oh, very much so. So correctly, I was in the drug discovery and drug development landscape for a number of years and have been a part of several new drugs that were first in class, some first for disease. That's the first medication that treats or manages a particular condition. And in that process, I learned kind of the scientific rigor of phase development, proving out that a concept or a compound can actually hit a receptor without unwanted side effects, then actually apply it to the patients who have the disease of interest, and then put in very large scale phase 3 type of studies, and then expand the populations even when it's on the market. I also have always been fascinated by the emergence of science, technology, and medicine, and the crossroads where if they play along together, you truly could get personalized medicine, and medicine that beyond the scope of just a single pill that you take, which is a passive act. So I made that switch pretty gradually. I actually started off in pharma companies then ended up becoming in digital health incubators in pharma companies. And around 4 years ago, joined Click Therapeutics, really to take what was then more of a tech company into the biotech model.
Yeah, that really leads into something. I mean, Click just a few weeks ago announced some very dramatic clinical information. You're quoted in that public release, and I recommend that people after the show go to Google and download it, because you provided just a wealth of data unexpectedly. I don't want to go into the data. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize publication of these data. They're very, very dramatic. So David Klein was at a conference. I was there. I was reporting on the conference, and he talked about how the digital therapeutic category had to become more biotech-like. And people were a bit confused by that. I wasn't confused at all. I understood he was really saying, look, we've got to get more rigor around our data. And my experience with many digital therapeutic companies, digital health companies, were the first generation were like engineers who had a relative who had a problem. They invented a solution, and they talk about their dad had this problem, their mom had this problem, their whatever. And I invented this app, this thing, this whatever. And they would do the basic minimum amount of patients they needed for a trial, 50, 60 patients, and submit that to the FDA for a 510K. Along comes David Klein, now you, Dr. Lakhan, and you say, that's not going to work. It's not going to work for the category. It's not going to work for the patient. It's not going to work for the provider. The physician won't have confidence in it. And certainly as a result of that, it's not going to be embraced by the payer. You and David come along and say, we're going to be biotech-like, rigorous. You just talked about that in your background with your experience of working on drug trials. So you bring that now into digital therapeutics. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the history of this recent trial. I think it's called CT132, and you were looking at sort of adjunctive treatment in migraine management. We see a number of new therapeutics medicines who've come out on migraines. I won't mention any brands, but recently there was another generation of drugs that came out. And yet, when I speak to patients who have severe migraines, many of them are still undermanaged, or they don't know when they should take their migraine medication. They don't know how to time it. In many cases, they have a serious migraine. They don't know if they should get in front of it. You've really developed a system, a complementary system that is unique in its approach. Could you talk a little bit about the trial design and the fact that you're probably the first company that I know of that in a very savvy way doesn't feel you're competing against therapeutics, you're complementing therapeutics so that the patient is suddenly at the center of the conversation as opposed to modality versus modality?
That's exactly it, Gil. So what you've been talking about and what we recently press released is our investigative prescription digital therapeutic that we're calling CT132, that is targeting migraine, episodic migraine. These are the folks, and in fact, I'm an episodic migraine sufferer, so I'm included in the patient population. They suffer 4 to 14 monthly migraine days. And we know that migraine is a bona fide neurological brain disease. It's beyond just attention type headache. You missed your coffee, now you're having some withdrawal headache or something of that nature. It's well beyond that. There's a complex brain phenomenon that occurs, and it's incredibly disabling. And in fact, it tops the world ranking of number of years lost in due to a particular disease and disability, particularly in the younger population. Around 4 years ago, we ventured to target migraine. There's 1 billion migraineurs out there in the world. 0 have been cured. There are dozens and dozens of therapies. And when there's that many therapies, that means they're often ineffective, or we could boost their type of effect. So what we aim to do is actually address prevention of migraine. So we, together with patients and providers, developed this co-design process. We interviewed patients. We actually approached patient-owned cooperatives, the American Headache Society, American Migraine Foundation, and we found out what's their unmet need. What are the pain points? The literal pain points and the indirect pain points for both prescribers and patients who experience this disease. We compare that to our platform, because then, we've been in the smoking cessation space in major depressive advancements in schizophrenia and so on, there's some commonalities of how to intervene on the human, engage in the human, and modify the brain and behavior. We apply that, develop the whole solution, and put it through a series of clinical trials. So what I'm so excited that we recently announced are two well-designed and rigorous clinical trials were positive. And what does that mean? In a nutshell, we were able to reduce monthly migraine days by 3 with the use of CT132. And that's remarkable. When you're having a baseline around 7.5 to 8 monthly migraine days, and we drop that down by 3, that's very meaningful. But it doesn't stop there. Our results and the way that we designed this intervention to reduce the brain sensitivity also showed in as early as 4 weeks, 8 weeks, and 12 weeks, we were able to improve statistically quality of life and even reduce disability on top of that.
You know,
Plus, yeah.
I'm also wondering, I mean, I know a lot of these patients get a limited amount of tablets per month to manage their migraines. So let's say they're allocated 8 tablets a month, but to your point, they may have 14 migraine episodes. So 3 is, you talk about 3, that's a significant impact on the quality of life of the person, the migraine sufferer, but also I think it's a tremendous message about, in a sense, polytherapy as a safest approach for this patient type. You've also been looking at this, I think, in terms of prescription drug use related software. And I wanted to ask you, because you're turning digital therapeutics into sort of a, well, not into sort of, into a science. And so, you're looking at this in terms of the patient feeling that they're not sort of an effect of the migraine, but what can the patient do? Can you talk a little bit about the whole concept of sort of prescription drug related software therapeutics, like your whole approach to that?
Yes, very much so. In fact, so it's called PDURS, Prescription Drug Use Related Software, and it's a draft guidance just issued a year ago by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA,
Yes.
right? The ones that we go to seek market clearance for any therapeutics, be it a drug, a biologic, and ours.
There's an update coming up. There's an update expected now.
That's right. We think that draft guidance is going to become full guidance or finalized guidance in a matter of weeks.
So how does that affect you? I mean, how does it affect you? Because I have a sense that you've raised the bar on the science. FDA is coming out with new, like the guidance is becoming the rule. Is your science, is your approach to the category kind of influencing their approach to the category?
Oh, very much so. In fact, what we've been developing for the last several years has almost opened the door for the regulators like the FDA to say, well, if you develop software like drug and you pair them with a drug together, a combination.
Which is what you've done in a way.
And the software contributes. Exactly. And if the software contributes to any meaningful clinical benefit, that information can get added onto the drug label. And when I was in drug discovery and development, we would be spending tons of money and years and trying to enhance the drug or prescribing information in the label. This now opens up the door to the new category of medicine, what we are calling software-enhanced drugs.
Just dropping in, you're right on time for Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. Today, we're chatting with Dr. Shaheen Lakhan, Chief Medical and Scientific Officer at Click Therapeutics, a pioneer in the digital therapeutic space. Stay tuned for the rest of the story.
Sort of an interesting question. My experience, of course, with growth hormone related drugs or diabetes is that the applicator has unique sort of FDA sort of acknowledgement, and the drug has a unique FDA acknowledgement. Sometimes what's happened is you could say that the mechanism, the software, becomes more valuable than the pill or the therapy. Has Click really created for the drug industry a unique differentiator, which, if you combine the two together, you actually have the Uber approach to medication? I mean, these data and the upgrade of the guidance to a rule, it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal for the category. How big of a deal is it?
I think it's a tremendous big deal. And if you look back And every new category of medicine, which is around every 20 years or so, the FDA issues a guidance, then you get a plethora. Biologics were first created when the FDA issued the guidance. Genomic editing, right? And CRISPR-based technologies and gene therapies essentially were created. I think we're just on the cusp of that new frontier based on this guidance. And it applies to every stakeholder. For patients, it's more personalization, it's more engagement. The software component can actually identify what their needs are and deliver content on a real-time basis. For providers, before the patient leaves the doctor's office, they could immerse themselves and the doctor confirm that they started the therapy. For payers, this could be cost reduction because we're improving work productivity, return to school and work, reducing comorbidities and other diseases associated with that primary disease. And for pharmaceutical companies, this is exactly becoming now patient-centric organizations. I'm not just focusing on the biology of your disease, I'm focusing you as a whole.
So this is like a new generation of software-enhanced drugs in a way. I mean, is that the case where like it's like you got a drug and you have a software-enhanced drug, you know, you're going to go with a software-enhanced drug to some extent as having added advantage therapeutically. Is that a possibility of looking at this new wave of technology, sort of like coupled with molecules?
Oh, 100%. I think the future will invariably be every drug is software enhanced drug that will come out in the future. And that is because how are we using drugs right now? Whether, regardless of your weight or your genders or your experiences or your genetic proteomic makeup or your development, you're almost getting the same dose. Even though we're calling it personalized medicine that we're practicing right now, it's actually impersonal medicine.
Yes.
We might personalize based on your genetic profile, but nothing else that is out there. I believe the software component is what's going to catapult personalization of medicine.
So, I mean, you're beginning to talk about how this approach is really going to enhance medicine altogether. I mean, you're talking about a whole new dawn of medicine at this point. And, you know, I think that the first generation that we saw, we know that I got a 510K with 50 patients and the payers are sort of like insufficient evidence. I mean, that was the response to that, right? Rejected, insufficient evidence. I mean, you've now sort of not partnered with, but you've essentially addressed one of the major obstacles to the category, which was giving the payer sufficient evidence so they can say, yes, this is a go on to formulary approach because we have a wealth of evidence. I think, was it CT-132 has like 500 some odd patients in the study, something like that? I don't know the exact.
Yes, 568 patients, and you hit the nail on the head. Payers are looking for evidence, just like in real estate, it's location, location, location. Payers and providers, it's evidence, evidence, evidence. And thus far, I would say in their meta-analyses on this, there's been insufficient evidence. They might be helping with adherence to therapy. They might be helping with coping with your disease, but they haven't thus far been hitting exactly the drug endpoint with drug-like efficacy and with the safety profile. That requires time, commitment, money, ingenuity, and phase-based research. That's why we needed this biotech model, and David Klein saw that very early on.
Yeah, I just have to say that your involvement in this is unique as well. You know, I've met a lot of companies throughout the world where I travel and meet with digital health innovators who have, you know, good executive teams. You know, they're you know, seasons and so forth. Very few have a noted physician or neurologist in this case on the staff who are leading the charge and have to boot clinical trial experience to the level that you have. I mean, you're like the trifecta for Click Therapeutics in terms of the range of experience you have. I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, you are an anomaly, an important anomaly, thank goodness. Do you know you have this great clinical background, MD, PhD. Do your colleagues sort of say, "Hey, Shaheen, what's with the digital toys? You know, come back and look at ALS and schizophrenia and Parkinson's like the rest of us. You know, get back in here." And you're really like, you know, out there recreating a category that needed a real clinical champion.
I hear you, Gil. And yeah, over the past years, I got that from all my colleagues, all of the key opinion leaders. It was around 3 years ago when we were establishing our first scientific advisory board. And we had folks like Maurizio Fava, the MGH psychiatrist in chief, Harvard Medical School professor, actually created the inventory that is known now as the treatment resistant depression MGH inventory. We had Stuart Tepper, professor emeritus of Dartmouth, Department of Neurology, every headache medicine migraine trial. I've known him for the past 15 years. We ran our first trials together, essentially. I could go on, former FDA division chief. All of them were skeptical because all the noise around them were health wellness apps or things claiming to be digital therapeutic but not hitting the drug-like effects that we were doing. I sold them on this multi-year, multi-phase process. We're going to prove out the mechanisms, the concept, and then do these large phase 3 type of trials and then replicate them too. And then we'll get the FDA through de novo clearances. And lo and behold, I will tell you, it's the CT132 data results that converted them, essentially. So they sat on my scientific advisor board. They've been waiting, show me the data, and evidence. And now I got them convinced. And I believe we're going to do the same with the health regulators and eventually the payers.
I mean, this is very dramatic for the entire category. I had said when I reached out initially to the company and asked to interview an executive on the trial, I saw the trial as a game changer for entire category, and for many reasons. One, the credibility of David Klein making a statement like he did, we're going to be biotech-like, and then lo and behold, being biotech-like and creating data, and not just 200 people, but going the distance 568 people. I did see the p-value, by the way. I saw it was a very significant p-value. You may want to share that with listeners, but it was a very significant p-value. So I've got to sort of say, you've now set the bar on where the industry needs to go. I'm not going to ask you to sort of speculate what their reactions are right now, but I'd love to ask you, I think it set the bar for you. I think that you and David have clearly incredibly high standards in terms of clinical data, in terms of operational rigor, in terms of what you want to do for patients. You strike me as you're incredibly collaborative with the pharmaceutical industry. You're not seeing them as competitors to your approach. You're seeing them as complementers to your approach. So do you mind sharing with us maybe a snippet of the next chapter?
Oh, very much so. And let me actually confirm, yes, we had a highly statistically significant p-value of 0.005. Not 0.05, which is the conventional cutoff, at 100th of that, right? 0.005, which we were really excited about. That just showed that these were very robust data and that the results that we're seeing were really true. Speaking, to the pharma collaborations, we actually have collaborations and partnerships with Otsuka Pharmaceuticals, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Indivior. And they're in 3 different categories: major depressive disorder, and there's a marketed product called Rejoin for incomplete responders of antidepressants, major depressive disorder. Our Boehringer Ingelheim collaboration are 2 programs in schizophrenia. One we've advanced so well, it's in a phase 3 study. One of the largest digital intervention studies that you could imagine is recruiting right now. And the last one with Indivior, they're the marquee company in addiction medicine. And we have partnered in a multi-product deal to start off with, guess what? A public health nightmare in America, the opiate epidemic. So opioid use disorder on a digital intervention there. Migraine is unique in that we did this alone. No pharma partnerships from conception to development. However, you can see the potential is we studied this therapy on top of all background medications, all migraine acute and therapy. And on that, we were able to extract that 3 monthly migraine day reduction. So you could pairing this very well for any pharma company with this asset.
You talked earlier about, sort of like the sense of breakthrough, of seeking to create a breakthrough sort of like wave. And you have, I mean, that comes across. I'd just be curious from a person who sort of entered into science as a physician, you've created something very special for America right now, American health system. How do you feel personally about this? I know you must feel proud, but as a clinician and certainly someone who's at the cutting edge of science, there must be an additional feeling of like I'm in awe. So you must feel a little in awe of yourself in some regards.
100%. And I mean, I have the pleasure to talking with you, but I'm basically the spokesperson of a huge team. And I mean, the team consists of other physicians like myself from other backgrounds, like internal medicine and so on, psychologists, computational, neuroscientists, and biologists, and then a whole tech team as well, engineers, software developers, product and product designers, data scientists, regulatory and compliance. And every day is so fun because there is one thing that unites them. They can work in consumer companies essentially, but it's that we are helping people, we are helping patients. Many of us actually suffer of the diseases in which we're trying to treat. And I'm going to share this personal story. I don't do it too much, but actually recently I have opened up. My older brother has chronic paranoid schizophrenia. And it was actually the large part of me coming to Click Therapeutic, striking that collaboration with Baron Gringelheim and advancing that program into a phase 3 study. What I've seen is a fractured healthcare system. What we would call the safety net, at its breaks, essentially. And this is Los Angeles, California. I mean, they get well-afforded public health and mental health type of funds. It just didn't translate, into the real world. And unfortunately, we had some really good antipsychotics there, but you have diseases where people are lacking insight. They don't realize what the disease is doing to their cognition. Negative symptoms. These are the symptoms, not like hallucinations and delusions, but lack of pleasure, motivation, no interest to be sociable, essentially. And that's why when we ventured on that pathway, let's first and foremost design first-in-class therapies, sometimes first-in-disease therapies, and prove out there that without adding any safety burden, software can be the next medicine.
Dr. Lakhan, it has been a privilege and an honor to speak with you. I mean, you're really at the forefront of bringing digital therapeutics to its fullest realization. I think that the first generation was enthusiastic, well-intended, but what was absent was the science. You brought that to the table. On the behalf of everybody who's been a fan of the category, thank you. Congratulations. I hope to have you back on the program again.
Thank you, Gil. It's been a pleasure.
And that, dear listeners, is the last note for today's melody. A huge thank you to our worldwide audience for tuning in. And a tip of the hat to our special guest, Shaheen E Lakhan, MD, PhD, Fellow, American Academy of Neurology, who also serves as Chief Medical and Scientific Officer at Click Therapeutics, a leading company developing and commercializing digital therapeutic software as prescription medicine for people with unmet medical needs. He also serves as a board member at SpineThera, spearheading AI-enabled clinical development and drug delivery platforms. Do follow Dr. Lakhan's work at Click Therapeutics via www.clicktherapeutics.com or on Twitter via @click_TX. Health Unabashed streams live 3 times a day on Healthcare Now Radio, Monday through Friday at 10:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., and 2:30 a.m. Eastern, and that's 7:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Pacific. Stay social with Gil and me on Twitter via @Gil_Bashe, and that's BASHE, and Gregg Masters, MPH, and that's Gregg with 2 G's. Don't forget to give your tweets some zing with our hashtag #HealthUnabashed. Until we meet again, pursue your passion for better health and with no apologies.